I think it's a great opportunity for the industry to get together, to network.
Speak to others and kind of steal best practice, and a bit of networking doesn't hurt.
The company invested on me to attend this seminar and workshop session, and it's good for us.
I found it a really inspiring event last year, and I think even more so this year.
The aspiration for the BTSR for this event is to help stimulate a learning community in our industry.
And that's the whole point of today, really, is to pool examples of really good practice, to share good ideas.
10 years ago I used to work with senior managers and say, hey, there's this thing called the internet, and if you want to gather ideas and get some business intelligence, you can put this term in a search engine, it will give you some information. And now we're working with Gen Ys and they're onboarding and say, do you realise that there's a guy in his 50s down the corridor with 30 years experience in this business and you can't Google his knowledge?
There's a lot of talk been today about the Generation Y, and I'm from that generation. I grew up with interactive screens throughout all classrooms.
So, what's on at the movies? Up, right, up. We're going to go to the movies with Up. If Maggie and I were going to go and watch Up, we would have a conversation that would go something like, look, I know Maggie, it's on at Leicester Square at 7:30, so I'll tell you what, I'll meet you outside at 7 o'clock. And if you're not there at 7:15, then I'll wander up the road and I'll get a couple of tickets at the Odeon, and I'll see you in the foyer and we'll watch the movie. Okay? I've got a date. Hey, look at that. Now, how would Gen Y have that conversation? Text. So there's a lot of evidence to show that Gen Y manage projects in this matrix way because they've grown up with this expectation of having real-time synchronous communication between each other.
The Learning Conference last year was more of the big picture stuff.
What we've done this year is listen to the feedback from last year. There are a lot more workshops rather than plenary presentations. So an opportunity for people to get much closer to the action in that sense and to think hard about what they need to be doing and indeed draw on the experience that they find both from the people who are giving the workshops as well as their fellow participants.
You and Semple did a very interesting talk this morning that was supposed to be about Digital Britain, but really ended up being a lot about social networking.
I'm talking about blogging, Facebook, Twitter. I'm not going to...
How to really reach a community of people who you want to teach, you really have to get out there and get into their own mediums.
You know, people get grumpy about the inanity of Twitter. What they don't understand is the inanity just shows you're there. It's like stroking. It's like walking into an office and having a coffee with somebody and saying, hi, what did you watch on the telly at the weekend? It's on that kind of level.
He was trying to make the point that Digital Britain should be more about what's on the iPhone, what people are tweeting, you know, how people are going to relate and learn in the future. And it was just really challenging for me to take all that in.
How do we teach them, either explicitly or implicitly, what's okay?
All right, how many do we have?
Don Taylor and Alan Samuel from the Tata Corporation looking at how can e-learning be effectively used by organisations.
How many e-learning solutions can you name in 60 seconds, starting now?
Twitter and Facebook.
Microsoft Pages.
Things like Twitter, Open University.
Yeah.
It's put e-learning on the map in a place where it should be looked at more seriously.
Does it have an area where learners can actually get together, post up messages, share things, even interact there, even if it works at chat room type?
It should, but it doesn't. We're at, ground zero.
Right, okay.
We've come a long way in the last year, but we have got an awful long way to go.
E-learning should never have been purported to save the world or replace the classroom.
So many people now are being employed very temporarily, so you've got freelancers who are coming in.
There's this huge challenge of the freelance population, which is a transient population. But the liability and responsibility of the employer is no less to a freelancer than it is to an employee.
We're kind of talking about industry funding and government funding here, aren't we? And I think from an industry funding point of view, the pot is tiny. The applications and the need far outweigh the size of the money we have available.
What we're hoping is that people will have the opportunity here to learn a little bit more about how they can use limited resources more creatively, more intelligently, more effectively.
The really frustrating thing for me is the theme that we're all talking about being quality training rather than numbers. It's so hard to get any funding if you're not turning out the numbers.
There's going to be less money for all of this stuff. That's not going to go away. In fact, it's probably going to get worse.
One of the questions I had was, you're talking about getting funding for your learning. How can you make your learning more effective with the little budgets you have?
I'm not sure about performance appraisal. I think it's a great idea, but I've never actually seen it work.
The last workshop I was in, it was one that was quite thought-provoking.
Not a big fan of coaching. I'm not sure that sitting down with somebody and having a very good conversation is ever going to lead to much other than an enjoyable discussion.
It does make you kind of think about things and think, well, do I agree with that? Or is he just doing it to kind of invoke a reaction?
You never change the way you do anything. You never adapt. Everything's about the urgency of I must get this on the air at 1 o'clock.
I think it's good because it generates debate and you start to question things. I think the danger of all L&D functions and people is to be in the ivory tower.
And it's actually creating conversations outside in the tea breaks and the lunch breaks.